everyone, and welcome to Daily Newspaper Analysis, which is presented to you by Losico. Today, we again have three articles for our discussion. The first article is from the Hindu newspaper, which is titled as Needed Full Disclosure on Electoral Bonds. So, as we have also in our several discussions already discussed as to what do we mean by electoral bonds. So, this article again talks about almost the same issue and as to why is it important for transparency to disclose the electoral bonds. The second article is again from the Hindu, which is titled as Embracing Cryptocurrency. So this article comes after El Salvador becomes the first country in the world to give legalized status to the Bitcoin. So what future does it have in India has been discussed in this article. And finally, we have this article from the Indian Express, which is titled as When Jail is the Rule. Now, as we know that under the general criminal justice system in the country, bail is the rule and jail is the exception. But in the current days, it has been seen that jail rather has been made a more of a general rule. So what are we going to discuss related to this will be there in this article. This newspaper analysis is presented to you by me. My name is Sheva Khan. I am a law graduate and had completed my law degree in the year 2019. I have also been a national debater and a public speaker, and here at LawSeco, I'm working as current affairs expert and manager for free content and outreach. If you wish to connect with me, you can always find me on my Twitter as well as LinkedIn handles. The links to both are available in the description box below. So this is the multiple choice question from yesterday's discussion. Global minimum taxation system has recently been pitched in. Your options are G20, G7, OECD, or none of the above. If you know the answer, you can put it down in the comment section below. Let's see what is the descriptive question for the day. What do you understand by electoral bonds? It's rather very easy and simple question, so you can definitely try attempting this answer. You can write down the answer in a word limit of maximum 250 to 300 words. Also, if you wish to download the PDF of these slides, or if you wish to avail other free study material like various kinds of notes, monthly current affairs magazine, and also along with the assignments and quizzes, then definitely you can join our Telegram group. So either you can scan this QR code, which you can see on your screens right now, or you can directly click on the link which is available in the description box below. Also, do not forget to follow us on our official Instagram channels for Judiciary, CLAT Prep, and LawSeco for other such amazing updates over there. Let's start our discussion for the first article of the day, which talks about the full disclosure on electoral bonds. So recently, while hearing a PIL by the ADR, the Supreme Court downplayed the concerns of the corrupting influence of anonymous corporate and foreign money. So it offered the voters the suggestion of match the following. Now here, first of all, we need to understand that what do we mean by the electoral bonds, and then it might make more sense to understand that what is this proposal or suggestion of match the following. So let's understand by breaking these two terms, electoral and bonds. So if we try to understand the bonds, simply bonds are the instrument of debts. So what happens is, for example, in one particular bank, I deposit, let's say 1 crore rupees. So in the lieu of that deposition, or in the exchange of that 1 crore rupee that I deposited, I will be given a kind of guarantee, a kind of a written guarantee that will be called as the bond by the bank, that my amount of this 1 crore rupee shall be on the interest of, let's say, so and so would be returned by this particular time. So here, also guys, please note that the bonds are, these are something that we can give to the banks, we can take from the banks, just depending upon which authority are we talking about. So simply, bonds are the instruments of debts that actually give us the guarantee of our money at some particular interest rate for some period of time. Similarly, when these bonds are done for the electoral purpose or giving money to any particular party that is there in the elections, these are considered to be as the electoral bonds. So what happens is that in India, the State Bank of India, please note that it is not the RBI or any other bank, rather it is the State Bank of India which has been authorized to issue the electoral bonds. So what happens is that, for example, I, being an individual, would like to show my support to any particular XYZ political party. Now, in that situation, what I can do is that I would like to give some funds as so-called donations, and in that regard, I can be issued the electoral bonds. So what would I do? For example, I want to donate a sum of rupees 1 lakh to my, a political party, whichever I actually am supporting. So what would I do? I'll just go to the State Bank of India. I'll deposit this 1 lakh rupee amount of this 1 lakh And in the exchange of that, I will be issued an electoral bond by the SBI. Let's see that for now or till now, it seems to be a valid concept that what if? So what is the problem? If I support a political party and I want to show my support financially as well, so what's wrong in getting the electoral bonds for the party? Now, let me tell you that why this has become a problematic concept these days. The biggest problem with the electoral bonds is that they are completely opaque in nature, as in which individual has given what amount of money to which political party remains completely opaque. And that is why it was even pointed out by the Reserve Bank of India that it can definitely become one way of channelizing the black money that various people have in the country. So let's say there is some black money that I have upon which I'm not paying the taxes or something, and this money I have hoarded from the government. And what I can do is that now this money I can use for buying the electoral bonds. So in a way, it will rather channelize or give a safe haven or a harbor to the black money of the people. And also, since we do not know that which political parties are receiving this particular amount of money, it again becomes difficult to understand that if at all these parties are trying any kind of wrong influence on the people to gain these donations or not. So that is why the opaque nature of the electoral bonds was the one which was questioned so much. And that is why even this article says that we should have full disclosure on the electoral bonds. Also, some other contentions had come up that when the electoral bonds are bought by the public money, see, obviously, when I am buying any kind of electoral bond to support any political party, I am doing with that with my money, and that is the money of the public. And that is why it would make more sense if the electoral bonds are also brought under the ambit of Right to Information Act, which definitely is not the case. Had that been the case, obviously transparency might have been ensured, but currently the opaqueness of electoral bonds has become a real-time problem. Now next, let's understand that what do we understand by match the following framework. So here the changes are brought in the electoral bonds legal framework that now even loss making companies can donate. Earlier what used to happen was that people definitely who had surplus, when are we in a situation to donate? Mostly when we have enough for ourselves, and then we choose to donate or help other people. But here now some changes have been brought that now even the loss making companies can actually donate, and earlier only the profit making domestic companies were allowed to do so. And then earlier, the foreign companies or the companies which were controlled through the foreign stake could not contribute, but now they can. So in a way, as you can see, the ambit of donation has been so widely increased that earlier only profit-making domestic companies could invest, as in, they could give the money as donations through electoral bonds. Now, even the loss-making companies can do that. Earlier only the domestic ones could do, and they could do, but now even the foreign companies or other companies which are controlled through foreign stakes, now they also can donate. And theoretically, political parties can be fully funded by a foreign company operating in India, even shell companies. Now this is one point that we should be very much concerned about, is that there is a very good chance, if you understand what do we mean by shell companies. See, just like we have shell of something on a particular thing, like we have a seashell. So generally what happens is that it only shows the outer covering and inside it is all hollow. Similarly, these shell companies are those companies which ultimately do nothing. They have no function at all, and they do not really even exist in any kind of functionality. Just that they have their names, they are registered, but mostly they are used for such kind of black money movement. And that is why now it gives a greater say or a greater movement to these shell companies, because now these political parties can be fully funded by a foreign company also, which is operating in India. And this even could be a shell company, which means that it might be a company that is run by a political party itself, or it is run by some other individual who is Indian or who does not want his name to come to the forefront. And just by using that shell company, he can donate or fund a party completely. And then in March 2021, the Supreme Court refused to stay sale of the electoral bonds. So in the time of March 2021, there was a question that was brought that now the sale of electoral bonds should be stopped, but the Supreme Court did not agree to that. And it listed several documents which establish a paper trail on donations, and to find out the information from both sides that matched the following. And it was criticized as impractical and plainly incorrect by the authority. And that is why here we have to understand that what are the correct reasons and the incorrect reasons. Let's understand match the following concept in a greater detail. So here there are incorrect. This is incorrect for three reasons. Firstly, full scale of registered entities is unknown. So like who at all, is giving in the money through electoral bonds, we do not know. So definitely there is huge opaqueness. Second, the annual reports of the companies are not readily accessible on the websites of the NCA, and that means the Finance Bill of 2017 amended Section 182 of the Companies Act to remove the requirement for declaring donations to political parties. And thirdly, the political parties are not needed to disclose their electoral bond donors, and only the donations can be disclosed. But who is donating to the party? So definitely, till the time we have this much of opaqueness in the system of electoral bonds, it is really not very much practical to increase the scope of electoral bonds as such. So let's discuss the second article of the day, which talks about legalization of the cryptocurrency. Now, as we know that recently El Salvador, which is a Caribbean country, which is a Central American country, basically has become the first country in the world to adopt Bitcoin as a legal tender. So let's understand that what is India's stance on cryptocurrency. So during the time of 2010 to 2012, cryptocurrency market in India had developed in the laissez-faire regulatory space. Now, as we know that laissez-faire is a very, very common concept when it comes to the political theory, which means let be alone, which means that there should be absolutely no interference of the state or any other authority, and the market, the business, should be able to run on its own self. And that is why in the times of 2010 to 12, the cryptocurrency market in India developed on the lines of the laissez-faire regulatory space, which definitely would not be entertained. And that is why from the time period of 2013 to 18, the government response was cautionary, alerting the users to the potential risk that came along with the use of cryptocurrency, like the volatility, susceptible to hacking, potential to facilitate criminal activities, and even tax evasion. And that is why, since this is the very issue which comes with cryptocurrencies like the Doge and Ethereum or even Bitcoin, that they are very volatile, and there is huge chance that they are being misused and they can be hacked as well. And then in the time of April 2018, the Reserve Bank of India imposed ban on cryptocurrency trading. So which was actually overturned by the Supreme Court in the year in 2020 later, when it said that a blanket ban or an outright ban is not really required. And what RBI can do is that it can come with alternative regulatory measures, and even it can have a government approved cryptocurrency as well. So that is why the Supreme Court said that in the coming times, there is definitely good scope of cryptocurrency, and that is why putting a blanket ban would be something saying no to the future world of technology. And thus it would be more suggested that the Reserve Bank of India itself comes with a cryptocurrency which is approved and regulated by the government. And then in the year 2020-21, that is current year, the draft Cryptocurrency and Regulation of Official Data Currency Bill was brought, which aimed to criminalize all private cryptocurrencies while laying down regulatory framework for RBI-backed digital currencies. So if you understand about the current status of cryptocurrency in India, the private cryptocurrency, be it the Bitcoin, Ethereum, Doge, etc., none of them are legal in India, and thus if we are doing any trade into it, it would fall under the illegal premises. But yes, this bill again says that it is also aimed to not only criminalize these private cryptocurrencies, but also to encourage the Reserve Bank of India to bring its own backed digital currencies. So let's hope that in the coming future, we would have this as well. So here we also have a few lessons that we can learn from others. Let's take the example of United Kingdom, where it classified the cryptocurrency as property, allowing it to be encompassed within regulatory legal framework in the country's economy. So there also, when they've allowed cryptocurrency, it is allowed to function within the legal framework. Then in Singapore, there is no exact legal classification as such, and the amenability of cryptocurrency transactions to the contract law has been established. So all in all, we can say that some kind of legal or lawful interference is definitely sought in the case of cryptocurrencies. Also, please understand that what is the difference between the cryptocurrency and the fiat currency. The fiat currency is the one that we are currently using, the notes, the coins that we currently have, which are issued by the government. So cryptocurrency is generated by the computers, and on the contrary, the fiat currency is issued by the governments. And in India, which authority is there for the fiat currency? Yes, it is the Reserve Bank of India. Then the cryptocurrency is decentralized, which means that no one can control, but the fiat currency is centralized, which means it can be monitored by the government, as in how much money has to flow in the economy, when the money has to be stopped. So all these decisions can be taken by the government in the case of fiat currency, but not in the case of cryptocurrency. Then the digital medium is the medium of exchange, whereas for the fiat currency, we have the physical medium of exchange, like we go to the banks, we go to the ATMs and stuff like that. Then the cryptocurrency has a limited supply, whereas fiat currency has an unlimited supply, but definitely governments keep a check as to how many notes or coins are minted or printed in a time period. And that is why this difference between the cryptocurrency and fiat currency is very important to understand. And if we take the examples, then for the Bitcoin, we have already learned about Bitcoin, Ethereum, Doge, etc. And if we take the example of the fiat currency, we have the rupee, we have the dollar, we have pounds, etc. So all these things come in the category of fiat currency. So now let's discuss the last article of the day, which talks about that is jail the rule or exception? So recently, the Delhi High Court granted bail to student activists Asif Iqbal Tanha, Natasha Narwal, and Devangana Kalita. So this has actually been a landmark order. So the court found no specific or factual allegations against the student activists who participated in the anti-CAA protest. Now, all of us, I think, amidst the time of COVID-19 pandemic, have literally forgotten about the protest that took place against the NRC and the CAA, which was the Citizenship Amendment Act. And these, just think that it is more than even a year that these people, these students of, Delhi, they had been put into jails because of that. So they were charged under the UAP 1967, which is the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So the court in the case of Asif Tanha held that the foundations of our nation stand on a surer footing than to be likely to be shaken by a protest, however vicious. So definitely, when we talk about freedom of speech and expression, obviously, please remember, right to strike is not a fundamental right. Yes, it is not a fundamental right under Article 19(1)(a), that is freedom of speech and expression, but right to protest, when we are trying to peacefully protest and show that we are not contented with something and we want to show our discontentment to the government, that definitely can be done. And that is why this is a very beautiful judgment that has come up through the court, that we, if at all we are on stronger grounds of democracy, then we should be in the capacity to take these protests instead of being, just being shaken by these protests. And definitely if somebody is peacefully indulging themselves into the protest, that is not something that would be amounted under the UAPA Act. Then the court in the case of Natasha Narwal said that it observed actually that it seems that in anxiety to suppress the dissent, the line between the constitutionally guaranteed right to protest and terrorist activity seems somewhat blurred. See what a beautiful, judgment has come out in this. This observation is so beautiful that, the courts has observed that maybe the authorities so badly wanted to suppress this dissent, or they so badly wanted to put a lock on the mouths of the people, that they actually forgot the difference between the right that is constitutionally guaranteed to us, which is the right to protest, and another problem of terrorist activity. And the authorities clearly could make no difference between the right as well as such terrorist activity. And then that is why they moved forward to putting on the charges of Unlawful Activities Prevention Act on these people who were just actually utilizing their constitutional right to protest. And thus, it reiterated that the constitutional principles underlying the rights of pre-trial prisoners should be definitely put to use. Then another thing that has been pointed out in this article is that the jail, either it is a rule or it is an exception. So here the object of bail is neither punitive nor preventive, but is principally to secure the presence of the accused at the trial. So guys, this is a very important thing for us to understand, that in India, jail is an exception and bail should be the general rule. But on the contrary, it seems that when we apply for bail in the courts of law, it seems that they at the first priority want to send the person right to rot in the jail, and only as a favor or only in the rarest cases they would want to give the bail, which definitely is not an idea or principle of the Indian criminal justice system. So the punishment begins only after the conviction. So see, as we know that we follow the principle of innocence, right? So innocence principle is followed in the Indian criminal system, wherein if at all, until the court has not given its decision against you, you stand only to be an accused, which means that till that date, you will be considered to be as an innocent person. Just imagine that after 2 or 3 years of trial, a person comes out to be innocent, and still he had to serve, a jail term of, let's say, 2 or 3 years of all the trial period as such. Is it not inhuman, and is it not unfair to that person who actually was innocent but still had to stay into the jail because of no reason? So that is why the punishment only should begin after the conviction has taken place, which means after the court has pronounced the judgment against the accused. And till then, everyone shall be deemed innocent until duly tried and found guilty. And thus, the Supreme Court, in the case of Union of India versus K.A. Najib in the year 2021 itself, held that the constitutional courts can grant bail to terror suspects when the right to a speedy trial is violated. And that is why they definitely see they are also suspects. Now, this, we are not saying that we should give a bail to every person now and then. Still, but if that person is a suspect and there is lack of any kind of evidence against this person, so definitely bail can be one thing that can be considered. So currently, the pre-trial prisoners constitute most of the prison population in India, and that is why we need to have the prison reforms. For example, if there are 100 people currently in the Indian prisons right now, so most of them, majority of them, are those that are just during the pre-trial period, which means that still they have not been convicted. The court has not found them guilty, but still they are into the jails, and definitely we need to have prison reforms in this direction. So this was all for the day. We hope it was a good and informative session for you all. Thank you so much for staying tuned with LawSeekho. If you like this session, please give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to our channels. Thank you so much.